Chapter 272. She was referring to Xiang Saiping's appearance. All of it. Hu Jingyao stopped kissing her. He just held her hand and held it in his palm. I can't tell now. The paternity test couldn't be faked. If Xiang Saiping wasn't afraid of that, that could only mean two things. First, she was really Su Qingsong's mother. Second, she was so powerful that she could influence the paternity test agencies. But the situation in front of him was obviously the first one. So, she's really my mother? If she wasn't afraid of the paternity test, it couldn't be fake. Hu Jingyao turned his head to look at her face and found that she was expressionless. He seemed to understand her concerns. He gently lifted her body and put her in his arms. So what? You can do whatever you want. If you want to acknowledge her, then acknowledge her. If not, then don't. Could he do that? Su Qingsang was a little hesitant. That's right. Hu Jinyao's words were straightforward and simple. All these years, she hasn't done anything for you. Now, she suddenly came out and said that she wants to acknowledge you. It's normal for you to not want to acknowledge her. To say the least, even if she's your biological mother, she might have ulterior motives. There are many people in this world who set their parents up, but there are many who want to set their children up. There are many, right? What's her motive? Su Qingsing looked at him and thought of the same thing. But she didn't want to think of people so evil. I don't seem to have anything for her to want. Idiot. Hu Jingyao knocked her head. You have me. Thinking about it, Xiang Saiping's story was almost flawless. But her appearance was a flaw. She didn't acknowledge her earlier or later. But after Hu Jingyao revealed Su Qingsong's identity, Hu Jingyao didn't want to talk about conspiracy theories. But he had seen a lot of conspiracies over the years. Su Qingsang didn't speak. She was a smart person, so she naturally understood the key point. But if the paternity test shows that she's really my mother, that's okay. Hu Jingyao knew that Su Qingsang had always been cold on the outside but warm on the inside, so he was very soft-hearted. If she's really your mother, then let her stay for now. Anyway, there's one more person to eat. It won't take much. As time passes, we'll naturally be able to see what she's planning. Su Qingsing nodded. That made sense. However, she said, what if she really doesn't want anything and just wants to acknowledge me? That's even simpler. Hu Jingyao rubbed the top of her head. Although I can't take care of her as my real mother right away, I can still take care of her. But we can get along with her first. As for the future, they could talk about it in the future. Su Qingsang figured it out and stopped thinking about it. Counter soldiers with arms and water with earth. Anyway, she was prepared for the worst. Her problem was solved. Chapter 273. Su Qingsang didn't sleep well that night. She had been dreaming the whole night. It was all about her childhood. She couldn't remember exactly how old she was, but she was very envious when she saw Su Peijian call Li Qianxue mom. So one day, when she saw Li Qianxue sitting on the sofa, she walked up to her with her short legs and called her, Mom. However, this sound was like a bomb. Li Qianxue, who had been resting with her eyes half closed, suddenly opened her eyes wide. His sharp gaze swept over her face unceremoniously. Who is your mother? Who are you calling Mom? Su Qingsang had never seen Li Qianxue like that. She was scared and didn't dare to move. Right at that moment, Su Peijian happened to come in. She heard it and rushed over, slapped her hard, and pushed her away. Get out. You B*TCH. This is my mom, not your mom. Su Qingsang fell to the ground. Su Peijian still felt that it wasn't enough. She took 2 steps forward and stared at her arrogantly. You're just an illegitimate daughter that no one wants. My mom pitied you and let you stay at home. You'd better know who you are. This is my mom, not yours. Su Qingsang was shocked. She watched as the mother and daughter walked away. She never called her mother again. After Su Yusin was born, Li Qianxue and her son often sat in the garden when they were free. Su Peijian read a book while Li Qianxue coaxed Su Yusin. That scene was as beautiful as a painting, but she wasn't the person in the painting. She had a little desire for her mother when she was young, but because she couldn't melt into the painting, it slowly disappeared. Wife. Wife. Hu Jinyao woke up in the middle of his sleep. The person beside him seemed to be sleeping badly. He turned on the bedside lamp and found that Su Qingseng was crying. How could he sleep? He immediately woke up. Wife. Wake up. Su Qingseng slowly opened her eyes. For a moment, she thought she was in a dream. She looked at Hu Jinyao in a daze. Wife, what's wrong? Hu Jinyao had been with Su Qingseng for a long time, but he had never seen her cry. The incident with Zhang Mei last time didn't count, but this was the first time that she cried while sleeping. Su Qingseng looked into Hu Jinyao's eyes and slowly woke up. She blinked and shook her head. I'm fine. It was just a dream. What dream? Hu Jinyao asked. Seeing that she didn't say anything, he tightened his arms around her waist. Dreams are all fake. Don't worry about it. Su Qingseng leaned against his chest and thought about her dream. She chuckled and said, Forget it. It's not worth worrying about. Hu Jinyao knew that she didn't want to talk about it. He pecked her on the face and said, Let's go to sleep then. It's still early. Okay. Su Qingseng turned over, found a comfortable position in his arms, and closed her eyes. When Hu Jinyao thought that she was about to fall asleep, he suddenly heard Su Qingseng's soft voice. Actually, it's good that she's my mother. It's really good. I've wanted a mother for a long time. Hu Jinyao, I believe. She didn't finish her sentence, but Hu Jinyao understood what she didn't finish her sentence. Looking at her sleeping face, a faint heartache welled up in his heart. The hand on her waist tightened a little, and he leaned over and kissed her on the lips. Su Qingseng was in a daze and almost fell asleep. Being kissed by him like this, she frowned again. But only for a moment. She turned over and continued to sleep. She was used to his arms and wouldn't wake up easily. Hu Jinyao's heart softened. Chapter 274. When Su Qingseng got up in the morning, Hu Jinyao was already up. She knew that he had to do morning exercises every day. After washing up, she left the room. She wanted to see if Xiang Kaiping had woken up, but when she smelled the aroma of food, she realized that Xiang Kaiping had already woken up. Not only did he wake up, he even prepared breakfast. Su Qingseng looked at the figure busy in the kitchen. For a moment, she really believed that Xiang Kaiping was her mother. Xiang Kaiping had already set the table for breakfast and happened to see Su Qingseng coming out. She rubbed her hands together uncomfortably. I didn't mean to disturb your kitchen. I just want to cook for you. Seeing that Su Qingseng didn't move, Xiang Kaiping became more and more uncomfortable. I don't know what you like to eat, so I made some porridge and side dishes according to Lin City's custom. I don't know if you'll like it. Su Qingseng couldn't tell what she was feeling. She had imagined this scene many times before, but when it actually came true one day, she couldn't believe it. Qingseng. Xiang Kaiping called her again, her expression cautious. It's okay. Su Qingseng shook her head. You don't have to be so polite. Hu Jinyao used to bring breakfast back when he came back from his morning exercises. I saw him. Xiang Kaiping was not young anymore, so she didn't sleep much. When I woke up this morning, I saw that he was going out. I told him not to buy breakfast. Su Qingseng was speechless. Soon, Hu Jinyao returned. Let's eat, Xiang Kaiping said carefully. Su Qingseng was not used to his attitude, as if he was afraid of upsetting Su Qingseng and Hu Jinyao. I don't know if you want to eat. Xiang Kaiping looked at Hu Jinyao, feeling a little uncomfortable. She also knew that Hu Jinyao's family was not ordinary, but she was afraid that he would dislike it. Auntie, it's okay. I'm not picky. Xiang Kaiping seemed to have relaxed a little. Su Qingseng and Hu Jinyao looked at each other, not knowing what to do with her attitude. After dinner, Xiang Kaiping volunteered to wash the dishes. It was too late for Su Qingseng to stop her. By the time Su Qingseng was ready to go to work, Xiang Kaiping was already ready. Qingseng. Her tone was full of caution. Are we going to do a paternity test now? Su Qingseng glanced at Hu Jinyao, and he gave her a look. Su Qingseng thought about it and decided that there was nothing wrong with doing it now. Just as she was about to ask Xiang Kaiping to leave with her, Su Qingsong's phone rang. Dr. Su, the pregnant woman with diabetes that you picked up yesterday fell into a coma this morning. The situation is not optimistic. How long have you been unconscious? I'll be right there. Su Qingsong knew about the pregnant woman. She had picked her up before she got off work yesterday. Her condition wasn't good. Su Qingsong asked the nurse on the other end of the phone to deal with the emergency. She hung up the phone and saw that Xiang Kaiping was still standing there, waiting for her. She couldn't care less about her now. Auntie, let's talk about the paternity test when I'm free. I need to go to the hospital now. Then you go first, I'll wait for you. I'll walk you out. Hu Jinyao had also finished packing. He glanced at Xiang Kaiping, then gave Su Qingsong a look. Su Qingsong followed him out of the door. The two of them got into the car, and Hu Jinyao didn't waste time talking to her. I had someone check it out yesterday. And Su Qingsong looked at Hu Jinyao nervously. Chapter 275. Hu Jinyao had someone look into it last night. Within one night, the information was in his mailbox. Su Qingsong was stunned. She obviously didn't expect Hu Jinyao to act so quickly. We can confirm it without a paternity test, right? It should be true. Hu Jinyao thought about the information he had found. She and your father were indeed childhood sweethearts. They were innocent. Then why, if two people loved each other, why wouldn't they be together? Because of Li Qianxue. Hu Jinyao slightly frowned when he mentioned Li Qianxue. He thought about the information he had read. Speaking of this matter, it was not a secret. As long as one stayed in Lin City for a long time, they would be able to find out a little. Li Qianxue was old Master Li's only beloved daughter. When he was struggling in his career, his wife passed away because of overwork. He felt guilty in his heart and loved Li Qianxue dearly. He never remarried. Li Qianxue was the daughter of a wealthy family. She was a little arrogant. She entered the company early to help her father. Within 3 years, she was already a department manager. At that time, Su Qinghui was a small director of the Li Group. For some reason, Li Qianxue fell in love with Su Qinghui. Su Qinghui had a woman he liked, and that was Xiang Kaiping. The two of them had been talking about marriage. Unexpectedly, Su Qinghui accidentally had sex with Li Qianxue after a dinner party. The next day, old Master Li caught the two of them having sex. What kind of family was the Li family at that time? The Su family was a well-off family. What kind of family was it? Not to mention that the Li family was almost the dominant family in Lin City at that time. It was easy to deal with a poor boy who didn't have much power. Su Qinghui originally wanted to fight to the end and refused to compromise. He didn't know that Li Qianxue happened to be pregnant. Now, Su Qinghui had to marry her. However, after Li Qianxue married him, he found out that Xiang Kaiping was also pregnant. In this way, Xiang Kaiping became a mistress. Xiang Kaiping couldn't stand such humiliation. She was Su Qinghui's lover, but he married someone else. Not only did he marry someone else, but he even had a child. At that time, Xiang Kaiping thought about aborting the child, but she was not in good health and couldn't have an abortion. She had no choice but to give birth, but she was only a child without a father. She thought of her own conditions and Su Qinghui's. In the end, Xiang Kaiping decided to give the child to Su Qinghui and let him raise it. As for herself, your mother is quite a formidable person. Perhaps Xiang Kaiping had been bullied by the Li family's rich family. In a fit of rage, she sold the house her parents had given her. He had gone to the north to do business. By doing so, she managed to make a name for herself. She had opened chain supermarkets in several cities in the north, but she was still a woman. No matter how good her business was, without her husband and daughter, she would still be alone. A few years ago, when she went out for a business meeting, she accidentally fell down. Over the years, he had been running around outside. As a woman, she had suffered a lot. After that fall, it took him half a year to fully recover. From then on, she left the business to someone else. He lived in seclusion and only hired an aunt to take care of her. Usually, he didn't go out much. Occasionally, he would check on the business. I think she came to acknowledge you purely because she wanted to acknowledge you. Chapter 276. Perhaps it was because Su Qingsang had lost her mother's love at a young age, but the expectation she had for a mother's love had almost disappeared as she grew older. She really didn't know how to deal with a person who claimed to be her mother. While they were talking, the car stopped at the entrance of the hospital. Hu Jinyao squeezed her hand before she got out of the car. Wife, don't feel burdened. No matter what you decide, I will support you no matter what. Su Qingsang looked at him, felt the warmth of his palm, and felt that it was incomparably comfortable. It was rare for her to take the initiative and kiss the corner of his lips. Okay, I know. The moment she stepped back, she smiled and said, Hu Jinyao, thank you. In the past, she had never known that there was someone by her side who would always think of her, protect her, and respect her in everything. She believed that given time, she would definitely fall in love with him. Or, she had begun to slowly fall in love with him. The way she looked at Hu Jinyao was much gentler than in the morning. What are you thanking me for? Hu Jinyao squeezed her hand hard. You're my wife. Never say thank you to me. Su Qingsing nodded at him, then hurriedly got out of the car and went to the hospital. The pregnant woman's condition was particularly bad. Finally, they unanimously decided to have a cesarean section. Su Qingsang and Director Zhang entered the operating theater together. Perform a cesarean section on the pregnant woman. After the surgery, another pregnant woman jumped off a building. Her husband was a victim of domestic violence and infidelity. She was 8 months pregnant and jumped off a building with her unborn child. Su Qingsang didn't have time to blame her husband. Because the pregnant woman had jumped from the 5th floor, she had been blocked by the anti-theft window frame and the canopy downstairs, so the impact was mitigated. He didn't die on the spot, but the child didn't look too good. She didn't care about anything else. She followed Chief Zhang out of the operating room and into the operating room again. After several hours of resuscitation, the pregnant woman was finally pulled back from the brink of death, and the child was fine. When the pregnant woman knew that she was about to fall, she regretted it and used all her strength to protect the child in her belly, so the child was fine. The pregnant woman herself had broken her leg and one of her arms. The first thing he did when he woke up was not to care about his legs and hands, but to see his child. Knowing that the baby was fine, the pregnant woman burst into tears in the ward. Looking at that scene, Su Qingsang felt an inexplicable sourness in her heart. Ever since she chose obstetrics and gynecology, she had delivered hundreds of babies. Every time, he would be touched by the pregnant woman's actions. She couldn't help but think of Xiang Kaiping. Perhaps she had given birth to Su Qinghui with great expectations, but in the end, she had no choice but to send her back to Su Qinghui. At that time, she also hesitated for a long time, right? She thought that she could probably start looking for Xiang Kaiping now. When Hu Jinyao came to pick her up after work, he found that she was in a better mood. This change was very obvious. What's wrong? Did something good happen? Yes. Su Qingsing nodded. The smile on her face showed that she was in a good mood. I've decided. What did you decide? I will recognize her. She didn't say who she was, but Hu Jinyao knew. He smiled and reached out to shake her hand. Chapter 277. I don't think it's necessary. Su Qingsang sighed. I can understand her. Hu Jinyao nodded. Okay, we'll have another mother to show filial piety to in the future. Xiang Kaiping didn't look like the kind of person who would cause trouble. Hu Jinyao thought about the information he had gathered and didn't think there was anything wrong with it. Su Qingsang looked at Hu Jinyao, feeling touched. She moved her lips and suddenly realized that the word thank you was too soft. What? Hu Jinyao leaned over and pulled her into his arms. Did you suddenly realize that your husband is more handsome than the heavens? Do you think you found a treasure? Let's go. This man couldn't be serious in front of her for more than 3 minutes. Hu Jinyao leaned over and kissed her on the cheek. Yes, Ma, When they got home, Xiang Kaiping was standing in front of the dining table. She seemed to have just served the soup. Seeing Su Qingsang come in, she rubbed her hands on her apron. You're back? Are you tired? The food is ready. I made it. Where's Sister Lu? Su Qingxing looked in the direction of the kitchen. Let Sister Lu do this kind of thing in the future. It's okay. I have nothing to do anyway. Xiang Kaiping looked at her nervously, thinking that Su Qingxing was angry. I just want to do something for you. I really don't mean anything else. Auntie. Su Qingxing couldn't help but sigh in her heart. I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying that you don't have to do this. Xiang Kaiping stood there helplessly, not knowing what to do. Su Qingxing felt helpless again. She turned to look at Hu Jinyao, who had just changed his shoes. Yes, Auntie. Since you're here, you're our elder. How can we let you do things? Let Sister Lu do these things. Okay. Then these. Xiang Kaiping looked at the dishes on the table carefully. Su Qingxing felt a little sad. It's okay. That's it for today. The two of them went to wash their hands and sat down at the table to eat. Xiang Kaiping made the local specialty of Lin City. She burned a lot of food on the table. Seeing Su Qingxing sit down, she seemed to be very happy. I don't know what you like to eat. I cooked these the way I used to. I wonder if the cooking habits of the people in Lin City have changed after so many years. It's okay. Auntie, please have a seat. Su Qingxing had never been a harsh person. Not to mention that this person was her biological mother. Even though Hu Jinyao had some doubts in his heart at first, half of them were gone after reading the investigation report. Now that he had seen Xiang Kaiping's performance, his doubts were gone again. The meal was rather quiet. Xiang Kaiping ate very quietly. She basically only picked up the food in front of her. Su Qingxing felt a little apologetic, so she picked up some food with her chopsticks and put it in her bowl. Xiang Kaiping's eyes reddened at Su Qingxing's gesture. She looked as if she was about to cry. Su Qingxing felt uncomfortable because of her reaction. He didn't dare to take any more food and just ate quietly. After dinner, Xiang Kaiping stood up to clear the dishes. Su Qingxing didn't stop him. She followed him into the living room and sat down. She looked in the direction of the kitchen, then looked at Hu Jinyao. You said that she had her own business in Rong City? Yes. Did she do well? Not bad. Although it wasn't in a first-tier city, she had opened a chain supermarket in several second-tier and third-tier prefecture-level cities. It seemed that business was good. Chapter 278. If she had lived a good life, how could she have aged so much? She should be younger than Su Qinghui, but she looked more than 10 years older than him. Yes. It was not easy for a woman to make a career in a foreign country. Xiang Kaiping had suffered a lot in the past few years. Her family business was not small for ordinary people. However, it was still not enough for the Hu family. Even so, Hu Jinyao admired her. At least she didn't collapse after losing her lover and child like other women. Su Qingxing nodded and reached out to hold Hu Jinyao's arm. Her voice was very soft. Seeing her being so careful, I can't bear it in my heart. Do you think I'm too soft-hearted? No. Although his Qingxing was easily soft-hearted, Hu Jinyao knew in his heart that it was probably because of their mother-daughter nature. To be honest, although I don't feel like a mother to her yet, I'm willing to try to accept her slowly. It's okay. I don't think Auntie will mind. Okay. As Su Qingxing spoke, she remembered that Xiang Kaiping had seen them fooling around yesterday. She couldn't help but sit up straight. As expected, Xiang Kaiping came out not long after she sat down. She stood by the coffee table and didn't sit down. Auntie, please sit down. Yes. Okay. Xiang Kaiping sat down with the same posture. Su Qingxing sighed in her heart. She was really helpless against such a person with such an attitude. After thinking about it, she got up and went to the kitchen to get a few glasses of water. She found some fruit from the fridge and cut it. When she came out, she put the water and fruit in front of Xiang Kaiping. Auntie, have some fruit. I'll do it myself. I'll do it myself. Xiang Kaiping couldn't let her do it. She raised her hand to stop her. Auntie. Su Qingxing knew that if she didn't make things clear, Xiang Kaiping would continue like this. Other things were fine, but who could stand her being so polite? There's something I think we'd better make clear first. Go ahead. Go ahead. Xiang Kaiping had already picked up the water, but now she put it down. Su Qingsing looked at her and put the water in her hand. Auntie, I'm fine. Listen to me, it's not a big deal. It's like this. All these years, I haven't seen you, nor have I interacted with you. It's my fault. Xiang Kaiping was in a hurry to speak, but Su Qingsing knew what she was going to say. Auntie, I'm not blaming you. I just want to say that the past is in the past. Forget it. It didn't matter who was right or wrong. But in the future, we just have to get along in the future. What do you think? Xiang Saiping's eyes reddened again. What? What do you mean by that? Do you believe me now? Yes. I believe in you. Su Qingsing had no reason not to believe her, although she still couldn't develop mother-daughter feelings for this woman. Auntie, don't blame me. Although I believe you, I can't call you for the time being. She didn't finish her sentence, but Xiang Kaiping understood. She knew everything. I know. Stop it. I don't want you to call me Mom. You can call me Auntie if you want. You can call me by my name if you don't want to. I don't mind. I really don't mind. She put down the glass as she spoke, and her hands moved quickly. Then let's do this from now on. You're staying here anyway. If there's anything in the future, just tell me. Don't be too polite. After all, you're an elder. Yes, Xiang Kaiping answered hurriedly. Chapter 279. I'm fine. It was fine. It's all done. Su Qingsing knew that Xiang Kaiping wouldn't be able to change her cautious attitude for the time being. Anyway, there was still a long way to go. They could take their time. That night, Su Qingsing went back to her room and lay on the bed. She thought about the expression on Xiang Saiping's face that day and felt some sympathy for her. Would Jinyao? Let's stay at the villa this weekend. Bring Auntie along. All right, I'll listen to you. She looks like she hasn't had a good time these past few years. I don't know how to treat her well. You're being nice to her by accepting her. Really? It's true. Then, I'll go shopping with her this weekend? Can you buy some clothes for her? Sure. I'll be your driver. Sure. Su Qingsing looked up at him. The more she looked at Hu Jinyao, the better he looked. He really did everything according to her wishes. She couldn't help but raise her head and kiss his chin. Hu Jinyao narrowed his eyes and suddenly turned over to press her down. That's it? What? I'm going to be your chauffeur this weekend, and this is your thank you gift? You? Su Qingsing was a little embarrassed. I wasn't giving you a thank you gift. How did it turn into a thank you gift? So, you're saying that you don't need to thank me? How would you like me to thank you? You're so smart. How could you not think of it? Hu Jinyao's smile was full of evil intentions, which made Su Qingsing a little uncomfortable. After thinking for a moment, she reached out her hand and placed it on Hu Jinyao's chest. In the end, Hu Jinyao was quite satisfied with the gift. He was very satisfied. Su Qingsing glanced at the medical records in her hands when she entered Ward 7. This room belonged to the pregnant woman who had jumped off the building. She had been living in the hospital for 3 days, and she realized that no one had come to see her. No one had taken care of her either. It was the nurses in the hospital who were taking care of her. Su Qingsing furrowed her brows and went in to give the pregnant woman a normal checkup. He asked casually as he was about to leave. Where's your family? The pregnant woman's hands and feet were broken, and she was wearing a cast. She could only move one of her hands. He straightened the clothes of the child beside him with one hand. I don't know. Maybe he gambled somewhere. She jumped off the building because her husband wanted to gamble with the little money left in the house. She refused to let him take it, so he hit her. Feeling helpless, she decided to jump off the building in a fit of anger. In the end, it didn't even pose a threat to the dead man, because the other party took the money and ran away. Su Qingsing didn't know what else to say. She went out of the ward and told the nurse to take care of her. She also asked someone to hire a volunteer for her. After arranging these things, she felt a little better. His phone rang at this moment. Hu Jinyao texted her, saying that he had a business meeting tonight and wouldn't be home for dinner. Su Qingsing replied, Got it. Not long after she returned to her office and sat down, she heard noises outside. She still had a pregnant woman to examine, but the voice on the other side was getting louder and louder. Su Qing-seng couldn't even examine the pregnant woman. She said goodbye to the pregnant woman in front of her, got up, and went outside. Who knew that she would see a skinny man dragging Lu Xiangyu out of the room? Lu Xiangyu was the pregnant woman who jumped off the building. At this moment, her hands and feet were broken, and she was being dragged by someone. She looked very embarrassed. The nurse and several young doctors were trying to stop him, but the man insisted on dragging her outside. Chapter 280. The man didn't expect Su Qing-seng to push him like that. Everyone else was trying to pull Lu Xiangyu away. Su Qing-seng was the only one who pushed. He staggered a couple of steps back and let go of Lu Xiangyu. As soon as he loosened his grip, several nurses quickly came forward to help Lu Xiangyu up. Seeing that the man was about to come again, Su Qing-seng quickly stood in front of him. "Who are you?" "This is a hospital. What are you doing?"
"What?"
"What does it have to do with you that I'm taking my wife out of the hospital?"
"Get lost."
"Get out of my sight." "Discharged?" Su Qing-seng's eyes widened. "Do you know about your wife's condition?" "She just had a cesarean section. It had only been 3 days. How can he be discharged?" "Why can't I be discharged? Your hospital eats human blood. She stayed here for a few days, and you spent more than 10,000? Are you bullying me?" "I don't care. I won't pay for it. I want her discharged right now." "Impossible. Not to mention that Lu Xiangyu's condition was originally not good. Even if she didn't jump off a building, she wouldn't be discharged so soon after a normal C-section." "What does it have to do with you?" The man glared at Su Qing-seng, not forgetting to roll up his sleeves, looking like he was about to hit her. Seeing this, Su Qing-seng advanced instead of retreating. He took a step forward. "What's wrong? You want to fight? Take a look at where you are. Your wife can't be discharged from the hospital in her current condition. If you want to cause trouble, I'll call the police." "How dare you? There's nothing to be afraid of." Without looking back, Su Qing-seng ordered Huang Jie and Cheng Siyu. "Huang Jie, call the security guards. Siyu, call the police. Just say that someone is causing trouble here." Seeing this, the man nodded hatefully. Good. You won't let me take her out of the hospital, will you? Then I won't answer it." He would never answer it. "You let her stay here. I'm not going to pay for it." After saying this, the man left without looking back. Su Qing-seng had no time to care about that man. She turned around and looked at Lu Xiangyu. She's not doing well. The bandage on his hand had loosened. "Are you okay?" Lu Xiangyu's face turned pale as she gently shook her head. This morning, the nurse asked her to pay when she checked the ward. Where did she get the money? She could only call her gambling addict husband. She didn't expect her husband to not only refuse to pay, but also drag her out of the hospital. "Doctor, I don't feel burdened. Let's recuperate here first." "Doctor, you're a good person." Lu Xiangyu was about to cry, but Su Qing-seng quickly stopped her. "Don't be like this. You're still in confinement. Crying is not good for your health." He asked the nurse and doctor to send the patient back and re-examined and bandaged the wound. After today's incident, the whole hospital knew about it. Afterward, Director Lin from the hospital administration came to see Su Qing-seng. Su Qing-seng explained the situation. Director Lin said that the money could be discussed later, but the patient should be treated first. As a result, Su Qing-seng got off work much later than usual. When she got home, it was already past 8:00 in the evening. Only then did she realize that Xiang Kaiping had not eaten yet. The dishes on the table had already gone cold. She sat in the living room waiting for them. Xiang Kaiping stood up when she heard the door open. "You're back? It's great that you're back. It's great that you're back." Looking into his eyes, Su Qing-seng felt a warm current slowly flowing through her heart. "Auntie, have you been waiting for dinner?" "I'm not waiting for you." After saying that, Xiang Kaiping was afraid that Su Qing-seng would overthink, so she quickly waved her hand. "I'm not waiting for you on purpose. It's just that I don't have the energy to eat alone." "Not really. Anyway, Chapter 281.
Aunt.
Su Qingsing blinked and suppressed the urge to cry. Next time, if we don't come back at the appointed time, you don't have to wait for us. We don't have a fixed schedule. I'm fine. I have nothing to do anyway. Xiang Kaiping smiled kindly. Su Qingsing knew that it would be difficult to change her mind, but she reminded herself to call her the next time she couldn't come back in time. Speaking of which, Xiang Kaiping hadn't used her cell phone in the past few days. Should I take her to buy one? She bought a cell phone, saved her and Hu Jinyao's phone numbers, and set them as emergency numbers. He told her that she could look for him if she needed help. Looking at the wrinkles at the corners of Xiang Saiping's eyes, Su Qingsing told herself that there was really nothing unacceptable. With such a mother, she would accept her sooner or later. Qingsing, are you upset? Nope.
Aunt.
I'll wash my hands, then eat.
AI.
Let me heat up the food. All right. Su Qingsing went into the bathroom and washed her face with cold water. When she came out, her mood had returned to normal. It was rare that Hu Jinyao wasn't at home. After dinner, Xiang Kaiping wanted to talk to Su Qingsing. Qingsing, you said last time that you and Jinyao found each other on your own. Then how did you know each other? Can you tell me about it? Sure. Su Qingsing wanted to say something, but she suddenly didn't know where to start. If he really had to talk about it, he would have to start with Wei Lenin. In fact, she felt that she should thank Wei Lenin for cheating on her. Otherwise, how could she have met such a good man like Hu Jinyao? This could also be considered fate, right? The fate between her and Hu Jinyao. However, when she met Xiang Saiping's worried gaze, it was obvious that she couldn't bring herself to talk about the past. It was all in the past. Su Qingsing casually told him what had happened, without adding any embellishments. Speaking of how well Hu Jinyao had treated her these days, she had a faint smile on her face. Xiang Kaiping was experienced. How could she not see that the happiness on Su Qingsing's face was genuine? After observing Hu Jinyao for the past few days, she had gained some understanding of him. You're lucky to have met Hu Jinyao. He looks like a nice guy at first glance. I'm relieved that you're doing well. Xiang Kaiping couldn't help but worry if she didn't see her daughter living a happy life. Su Qingsing nodded. She could sense the concern in Xiang Saiping's words, and it worked. Auntie, don't worry. Hu Jinyao treats me very well. Although she hadn't fallen in love with him yet, she believed that it would happen sooner or later. I can see that. Xiang Saiping's voice was filled with emotion. Your luck is much better than mine. Your father. She suddenly stopped and looked at Su Qingsing with hesitation in her eyes. How has your father been all these years? After she left Lin City, she never paid attention to Lin City or any news about Su Qinghui. She told herself that yesterday's events were like yesterday's death. Since she had left, Su Qinghui's fate was not something she should be concerned about. However, in the past few days, she had seen a face that looked similar to Su Qinghui's, so she couldn't help but care about him again. My dad? Su Qingsing looked at Xiang Kaiping. She wasn't surprised that Xiang Kaiping asked about Su Qinghui, but she said, I don't know. I haven't been back there for a long time. I don't know how he is doing. Chapter 282. Yes. Su Qingsing nodded. I moved out after I married Jinyao. Then, I was busy with work and so was Jinyao. We don't always have time to go. In fact, it was Su Qinghui who didn't want to see them. However, Su Qingsing wouldn't say that out loud. But last time, when Hu Jinyao held a banquet in his company, I saw Dad. He seems fine. Then he and Xiang Kaiping paused. She suddenly felt that it was inappropriate for her to ask this question. He doesn't have a good relationship with Auntie Li Qianxue. Su Qingsing knew that there was no point in lying about this. Or maybe Xiang Kaiping wanted to hear this. On the surface, they are the model couple in Lin City's business circle. They treated each other with respect. But I don't think it's good. Is that so? Xiang Kaiping was silent. No one knew what she was thinking. The atmosphere was a little awkward. Su Qingsing didn't know what to say. As a junior, it was not appropriate for her to intervene in the affairs of the elders. To ease the awkwardness, Su Qingseng decided to change the topic. Do you want to see his photo? Do you? Of course. Su Qingseng didn't have Su Qinghui's photo on her phone. However, she had added Su Yusin as a friend on QQ last time, so Su Yusin had a lot of photos in his space. Xiang Saiping's eyes lit up. After being apart for so many years, she still wanted to see Su Qinghui. Su Qingseng took out her phone and clicked on Su Yusin's WeChat space. He had a photo album that his family could see. There were photos of all the members of the Su family, including Old Master Li. Su Qingseng showed Su Qinghui's photo to Xiang Kaiping. It was taken when Su Qinghui attended a banquet. He was dressed in a suit and leather shoes, looking elegant. He looked like a 40-year-old man. He was holding a glass of wine and chatting with someone. Xiang Kaiping stared at the photo, and her eyes suddenly reddened. In the blink of an eye, more than 20 years had passed. Su Qinghui hadn't changed at all. He still looked the same, but she had aged. She also wanted to meet Su Qinghui if she could. But from the looks of it now, there was no need for them to meet again. Auntie? Su Qingseng wasn't sure what Xiang Saiping's reaction meant. She wanted to take the phone back, but Xiang Saiping's hand swiped on the screen. The next photo was of Su Qinghui's family of 4. This was taken on Su Peijian's birthday. Su Peijian and Su Yusin were standing in front, and Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue were standing behind them. The family of 4 was good-looking, well-dressed, and had a good temperament. Xiang Saiping's hand trembled. Who is he? Su Yusin's features were similar to Su Qinghui's, just a smaller version. In Xiang Saiping's eyes, this was Su Qinghui when he was young. He's the younger brother. My dad, and Annie gave birth to her later. He's 8 years younger than us. Xiang Kaiping was stunned. For a moment, she forgot to ask why Su Qingseng was not in the photo of the family of 4. Her face was very pale, and Su Qingseng found that she seemed to be trembling. Auntie? Are you okay? I'm fine. Xiang Kaiping shook her head and murmured. Su Qingseng heard her clearly. She called him a liar. Liar? Who is the liar? Qingseng, I'm feeling a little uncomfortable. I'm going back to my room to rest. Auntie. I'm fine. Xiang Kaiping stood up. She didn't look too good. She didn't even care about the weird look on Su Qingseng's face. After so many years, she still remembered what Su Qinghui said. Chapter 283. He said that although he married Li Qianxue, he had no choice. He said that except for that accident, he would never touch Li Qianxue. He would keep his chastity for her and make her trust him. Xiang Kaiping smiled. That smile was a little bitter. She suddenly felt that she could let go of her obsession for so many years. Because Su Qinghui was a liar. He lied to her about his feelings. He had said it before, but now he even had a son. What was this? Su Qingseng watched Xiang Kaiping disappear into the back of the room and felt that something was wrong. She looked back at the phone. Was Xiang Kaiping angry because of this photo? Su Qingseng waited for Hu Jinyao to come back and told him about it at night. Do you think Auntie was provoked in some way? I don't know. Hu Jinyao didn't quite understand Xiang Saiping's reaction. Is it because she's unhappy that your father had a child with another woman? Su Qingseng was stunned. She thought about it and thought it was really possible. Maybe. The man she liked had a child with another woman. There should be other reasons. Hu Jinyao thought of the key point. Think about it. Su Peijian is older than you. That means she should have known that your father had a child with another woman. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. Su Qingseng couldn't understand and didn't want to think about it. But my father he didn't want to marry Li Qianxue and got Xiang Kaiping pregnant. It can only be said that it was a freak accident. Hu Jinyao actually didn't like Su Qinghui. If you are really so determined, don't care about Li Qianxue and refuse to the end. If you really want to care about it, don't be with Li Qianxue and Xiang Kaiping at the same time. Su Qingseng didn't say anything. She knew what happened that year and didn't think it was a freak accident. In the end, it was all Su Qinghui's responsibility. Of course, Li Qianxue was also responsible. A forceful melon would not be sweet, but she insisted on forcing it. The result was the pain of the three of them.
Why?
Sweetheart, tomorrow is Friday. Why don't you take Mom shopping tomorrow night after you get off work and walk around? The three of us will go out on the weekend after tomorrow? Okay. Su Ching-seng nodded. She also wanted to take Xiang Kaiping out for a walk. My mom came here, but she didn't have a cell phone. I plan to take her to buy one tomorrow and apply for a card.
Yes.
Hu Jinyao thought for a moment, then took out a black card from his wallet and handed it to Su Ching-seng. Remember to use my card. Why do I have to use your card? I have money. Hu Jinyao had thought of giving Su Ching-seng a credit card before, but his identity hadn't been exposed at that time. He was afraid that she would be suspicious if he gave it to her. He had forgotten about it after returning from Rong City. This time it was just right. Besides, mobile payments are everywhere now. Who would still carry a card? Su Ching-seng glanced at him. Hu Jinyao nodded and said, "You take it too. This can also be tied to the payment app on your phone." Su Ching-seng looked at the card in his hand and finally reached out to take it. "If I don't spend your money, will you feel uncomfortable?" "Of course." Hu Jinyao nodded. "You're my wife. Aren't you supposed to spend my money? If you're not willing to spend my money, then why should I make so much money? You're so talkative." Su Ching-seng put the card aside. "Okay."
Yes.
"Okay."
Sleep.
He liked the suggestion. Chapter 284. What are you doing? I said I'm going to sleep.
Yeah.
Let's sleep. You sleep, and I'll sleep. Hu Jinyao was so shameless that Su Ching-seng almost laughed out of anger. She wanted to resist, but he succeeded in the end. She thought about it and decided to let him be. The next day, there wasn't much to do in the hospital. Su Ching-seng entered all the records into the computer in the afternoon, looked around the wards, and then went home. She told the housekeeper not to cook and took Xiang Kaiping out to eat. Although Xiang Kaiping didn't look abnormal when she woke up this morning, Su Ching-seng still wanted to make her happy. There was a department store near Su Ching-seng's house. After dinner with Xiang Kaiping, they went shopping together. "Ching-seng, I have clothes to wear. You don't have to buy these. Auntie, it's okay." Su Ching-seng held her arm. "The weather here is different from Rong City. We can always buy more." Ching-seng. Xiang Kaiping was very touched, but she didn't know what to say. "Auntie, you don't have to be so polite with me." Su Ching-seng thought about it and decided to take Xiang Kaiping to buy a cell phone first. The department store was next to a large communication center. When Xiang Kaiping was in Rong City, she only used a landline phone. Su Ching-seng chose a thin and light smartphone for her, which had good performance in all aspects. "Auntie, let me tell you how to use this phone." She downloaded all kinds of software for Xiang Kaiping. Then he added his own account in the software. Xiang Kaiping had been in a semi-secluded state before, but now she looked at the phone and learned quite seriously. "You mean, I can send you a message by pressing this WeChat button? Don't I have to type?"
No.
I'll teach you. I'll teach you. You can do this." Su Ching-seng sent a voice message to Xiang Kaiping as she spoke. Then she used Xiang Kaiping's phone to let her listen. "It's so clear." Xiang Kaiping smiled happily. "It's much better than the phones I used before. In the past, whenever it was convenient for her to communicate, she would always use the old model. This was the first time she used it."
Yes.
"If I don't come back for dinner next time, I'll use this to send you a message."
Good.
"This is good." Xiang Kaiping liked it very much, but Su Ching-seng felt a little sad. Both Su Chinghui and Li Qianxue's phones were custom-made. Usually, their partners would send them all kinds of electronic products. Xiang Kaiping was rich, but she still let herself live like that. It must be because she had been heartbroken. You don't want to just enjoy yourself, do you? He secretly made up his mind to treat Xiang Kaiping better in the future, but it was not too late to start now. "Auntie, you can slowly learn how to use a mobile phone at home. Let's go buy clothes first." "Okay." Xiang Kaiping put her phone away, and the two of them went shopping. After entering the department store, Su Ching-seng led Xiang Kaiping straight to the women's clothing department. Xiang Kaiping used to wear old-fashioned clothes. Su Chingseng picked out a few sets of clothes for her that looked young and elegant. Auntie, go ahead and try. It's okay. Isn't she too young? Xiang Kaiping didn't think it was appropriate, but she still went to try. Su Chingseng watched as Xiang Kaiping walked into the fitting room. She wanted to help Xiang Kaiping pick out a few more clothes. At this time, another customer came in. She didn't notice it at first, but the moment she raised her head, she saw the reflection of the figure in the mirror. Chapter 285. She froze for a moment and didn't have time to put the clothes back on the rack. Su Peijian and the others had already noticed her. Su Peijian saw Su Chingseng at once.
She was really angry when she saw Su Chingseng.
This woman was used to pretending to be innocent and kind. She made people think that she was a good person. But what happened? She stole Qiu Yanba's heart without saying a word. She started to pretend to be innocent. Su Peijian remembered that she had specially called Qiu Junjiu out today just to try again. But Qiu Junjiu refused to come out. She knew that she might have been busy and didn't have time to come, but she couldn't help but wonder if it was Qiu Yanba's idea. Now that she saw Su Chingseng, Su Peijian started to feel uncomfortable. She didn't hide her emotions at all. Luo Meishan and Song Yoha, who were next to her, felt it and saw Su Chingseng at the same time. Everyone knew that the Su family had an illegitimate daughter who couldn't be shown in public. Every time they met before, Luo Meishan and Song Yoha didn't forget to say a few words of sarcasm. But now Luo Meishan and Song Yoha didn't say anything. Although they didn't go to the Tianyu Group's banquet last time, they were reminded by their elders when they came back. Su Chingseng was no longer the same as before. She wasn't just the illegitimate daughter of the Su family. She had another identity now. She was the wife of the CEO of the Tianyu Group. The two of them didn't say anything and just stood behind Su Peijian. Su Peijian looked around and knew what the two of them were thinking. She became more and more angry. These people didn't want to offend Hu Jinyao or the Tianyu Group, but could they offend the Li family and the Su family? Su Peijian glared at Luo Meishan and Song Yoha with a fierce look. The two of them met her eyes. For a moment, they looked a little anxious. Su Chingseng didn't have any interest in the eyes of these three rich young ladies. Seeing Su Peijian, she knew how much she disliked her, so she naturally wouldn't rush to talk to her and get close to her. She nodded slightly as a greeting and turned around to continue picking out clothes. Xiang Kaiping had only brought a box of clothes this time. She wanted to buy a few more sets for her. In the end, the two of them looked at each other. Luo Meishan took a step forward, looked at Su Chingseng and said, "It's really different now that you have the CEO of Tianyu Group. In the past, how could a person like you enter a store like this?" Su Chingseng paused and turned to look at Luo Meishan again. At this moment, Song Yuho also said, "Isn't that so? I'm like a phoenix that has flown up the branches." Unfortunately, crows are crows. You really don't have much foresight. Luo Meishan glanced at the clothes in Su Chingseng's hands and clicked her tongue. Su Chingseng looked like she was only in her 20s, but the clothes she had chosen seemed to be worn by someone in her 40s. If this wasn't bad taste, then what was? Su Chingseng put down the clothes in her hands and looked at Su Peijian. She stood behind Luo and Song, the corners of her lips curling up, clearly in the mood to watch a good show. She knew that even without Qiu Yanba, she and Su Peijian would never be able to get along. However, she didn't expect that she would still rush to embarrass herself in front of her at this time. Chapter 286. As soon as she said that, the faces of the shop assistants on the side darkened. Their store only sold high-end women's clothing and took the luxury route. There was hardly a second piece of clothing for each piece. It would be strange if such a store was said to be unpresentable. However, it was obvious that the people in front of them were not ordinary people. Since the shop assistants were unhappy, they couldn't show it clearly. Luo Meishan's face darkened even more. If that was what she meant, wouldn't she also be unpresentable if she entered the store? I didn't mean that. Su Chingseng's words made Luo Meishan angry. I'm just saying that you have bad taste. Buying clothes in the store is called having bad taste? Su Qing-sang looked Luo Meishan up and down and snorted. Then your taste is not very good either. Luo Meishan was at a loss for words. Song Yuhun narrowed her eyes. She had met Su Qing-sang several times in the past, but she had never seen Su Qing-sang with such a face. What was this? Had she become bolder after having a backer and background? Meishan, you really don't know how to talk. You are obviously not presentable and don't deserve the clothes here. Why are you saying that these clothes are not presentable when it comes to you? You really? It seemed like she was blaming Su Qing-sang, but in fact, she was belittling her. Su Qing-sang nodded. So, in your hearts, clothes are more presentable than people, right? No wonder. Usually they are not presentable people. Without clothes, they are naturally not presentable. Su Qing-sang, who are you scolding? This time, Luo Meishan was furious and pointed at Su Qing-sang. Her face was full of anger. Su Qing-sang cleared her throat and took a step back. I'm not scolding anyone, but if you think so, then there's nothing I can do. Su Peijian didn't speak. She stood less than 2 meters away from Su Qing-sang and watched her stab the others with a faint smile on her face. She narrowed her eyes and was very sure of one thing. Su Qing-sang had probably been pretending to be weak in the past 20 years in the Su family. Look at her. Where was the cautious look from before? She was deceived by Su Qing-sang, and she was afraid that Li Qianxue was also deceived by Su Qing-sang. Su Qing-sang, don't be so smug. Didn't you just hook up with Hu Jinyao? If it weren't for him, you... Before Luo Meishan could finish her sentence, the fitting room door opened. Xiang Kaiping walked over. Qing-sang, what do you think of these clothes? She looked up and saw that Su Qing-sang was surrounded by a few girls, and they weren't wearing the clothes of the shop assistants. She seemed to have heard something about Hu Jinyao just now. What was going on? Qing-sang? Auntie, I'm fine. Su Qing-sang ignored Su Peijian and the others. No matter what happened to Su Peijian, it had nothing to do with her. Right now, she was thinking about nurturing her mother-daughter relationship with Xiang Kaiping. Naturally, she wouldn't care about those unrelated people. It's pretty good, better than the previous ones. This one is not bad either. She handed the dress that she had just picked, the one that Luo Meishan had complained about, to Xiang Kaiping. Auntie, try this one on too. There's no need. Why did you buy so much? As long as it's enough. Xiang Kaiping waved her hand. She knew that her daughter wanted to be good to her, and she was touched. But that was enough. Chapter 287. She glanced over and saw Su Peijian right away. That face looked really familiar. Just go and try it on. It's okay. Su Qing-sang was very patient. Once you're done shopping, come with me later. I need to change into some clothes. Okay. In fact, she had clothes to wear. Hu Jinyao didn't hide it anymore after his identity was exposed. She had sent a lot of clothes for the 4 seasons to her house. However, she was afraid that Xiang Kaiping would feel uncomfortable, so she could only think of ways to stop her from thinking too much. Especially when she saw that Xiang Kaiping was looking at Su Peijian, she stood in front of her and blocked her view. In her opinion, it was better for Xiang Kaiping not to meet the Su family, no matter who it was.
Okay.
Xiang Kaiping smiled. The wrinkles at the corner of her eyes were full of pride. You're still young. You should dress up more. I'm old. It doesn't matter what I wear. As she spoke, she couldn't win against Su Qing-sang and went to try on the clothes. Before she left, she glanced at Su Peijian again. After a few more glances, she remembered. Wasn't that girl yesterday she was looking at Su Peijian, and Su Peijian was looking at Xiang Kaiping? At first, Su Peijian thought that this old woman was Su Qing-sang's mother-in-law, which was Hu Jinyao's mother. However, when she heard Su Qing-sang's address, she was a little hesitant. Su Qing-sang and Hu Jinyao were married, so she couldn't call his mother aunt? Su Qing-sang, who is she? Inexplicably, Su Peijian just wanted to find out. Su Qing-sang watched Xiang Kaiping's figure disappear behind the fitting room, then turned to Su Peijian. Does it have anything to do with you? Su Qing-sang. Su Peijian was angry. Don't be too arrogant. Don't forget who gave you who you are today.
Yes.
Your Su family gave it to me. So, do you want me to be grateful? There's no need to be deeply grateful. Just don't be heartless and ungrateful. Su Peijian's words were quite rude. Su Qingseng smiled. Even if you're ungrateful, you have to be forgetful and ungrateful. If Miss Su remembers correctly, I am also Su Qinghui's daughter. Before hearing about Xiang Saiping's experience, she had always been curious about her own background. She had always thought that it was normal for Li Qianxue to treat her like that. But now that she thought about it, what did it have to do with her? It was all Su Qinghui's fault. If Li Qianxue didn't want to see her, she could ask Su Qinghui not to accept her. But what about him? He had accepted her and brought her back to the Su family. When had he ever given her any fatherly love? Su Qingseng. Su Peijian nodded. Good, very good. Are you determined to go against me? I don't dare. Su Qingseng raised her head and puffed out her chest. She wasn't afraid of Su Peijian's expression at all. I don't want to go against you. I just want to mind my own business. Su Qingseng. I really underestimated you in the past. Su Peijian stared at Su Qingseng's face, snorted, and looked at Luo Meishan and Song Yuha. Let's go. Su Qingseng turned her face sideways and made a gesture of invitation. Su Peijian's face grew darker and darker. She kept a straight face until they left the shop. Su Qingseng stood there, and the smile on her face faded. If she could, she really didn't want to fight with Su Peijian like this. In the past, Su Peijian wasn't good to her, but she wouldn't deliberately make things difficult for her. Thinking of the reason that made Su Peijian like this, Su Qingseng felt a headache. It was all Qiu Yanba's fault. Chapter 288. Qingseng, who are those people just now? Are they your friends? Xiang Kaiping casually put the clothes in her hand into the hands of the shop assistant and asked very casually. I don't think so. Su Qingseng's answer was also quite casual. They're just the children of Jiniao's business partners.
Oh.
Xiang Kaiping didn't ask anymore. She glanced at Su Qingseng and roughly understood why she didn't tell the truth. She was a little touched. This daughter of hers was a considerate person. However, when Su Qingseng went to pay the bill, she couldn't help but look down. So that person was Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue's daughter? She didn't look like them at all. That expression was so arrogant and arrogant. Li Qianxue hadn't been like this in the past. It seemed that Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue must have spoiled this daughter very much. Her heart was slightly sour. However, when Su Qingseng came over, there was no trace of them at all. Let's go and pick out the clothes you want to wear. Auntie, don't rush. You still haven't bought shoes. Su Qingseng smiled and held her hand. One was to show that they were close, and the other was to not want her to think about Su Peijian again. As for Su Peijian, it probably wouldn't be so easy. She didn't know what she would do. On the other side, after leaving the clothing store, Su Peijian was not in the mood to shop at all. She hurriedly sent Luo Meishan and Su Qingseng away and rushed home. Su Qinghui was not at home today because he had a business meeting. Su Yusen was not back from school yet and Li Qianxue had just returned from a business meeting. When Su Peijian saw Li Qianxue, she only felt that she had been wronged. She couldn't suppress it now.
Mom.
What's wrong? Li Qianxue was nearly 50 years old, but because she took good care of herself, there wasn't even a fine line on her face. She had been on good terms with Su Qinghui all these years, but she didn't get along with him. She didn't have much hope in the relationship between husband and wife, but she doted on this daughter of hers very much. Mom, that little... Su Peijian wanted to curse, but in the end, she was worried about her identity. That's Su Qingseng. She went too far. Su Qingseng? When Li Qianxue heard the name, she was displeased. What's wrong with her? Today, Su Peijian didn't add fuel to the fire. She just told him what had happened that day. Do you know that she stole Yanba away? She pretended to be innocent and pure every time. You didn't see how sharp she was just now. All these years, we've been deceived by her. Li Qianxue's forehead twitched. She didn't like Su Qingsang very much, who would like their husband's illegitimate daughter to wander around in front of them every day. But now, Su Qingsang's identity was different. Li Qianxue looked at her daughter with a face full of grievance. That's enough. Think about it, if she didn't have any tricks up her sleeve, how could she win Hu Jiniao's heart?
Who was Hu Jiniao?
You're still young, so you probably haven't heard of it, but I know it very well. Hu Jiniao had been so arrogant at the banquet. Everyone could see his attitude. She wanted to make things difficult for Su Qingsang, but would Hu Jiniao allow it? Li Qianxue thought of something from before. She patted Su Peijian's hand and said, "Let's talk about the project in the city. We, the locals, actually couldn't compete with him, an outsider." Of course, in the end, although everyone was together, it was a win-win situation. Chapter 289.
Mom, what are you talking about?
You want me to put up with Su Qingsang? It's not that you put up with her. It's that you don't touch her for now. Let's wait and see. I just can't take it lying down. Su Peijian was furious when she thought of Qiu Yanba.
Why?
All right. Li Qianxue still didn't know why her daughter did it. She took her hand helplessly. I don't like someone like Qiu Yanba. My daughter is so good. It's okay to find someone better.
You.
That's why Qiu Yanba has no taste. You should at least find someone like Hu Jiniao, right? Hu Jiniao again. In the end, it was Su Qingsang's fault. Su Peijian didn't think it was her fault. She only felt that Su Qingsang was wrong. It was all because of her. It was because of her.
Mom.
I really can't accept it. Su Peijian felt so wronged that she hugged Li Qianxue like a child.
All right.
Li Qianxue patted her daughter's back. I'll find you a better one later. Good girl. Su Peijian stopped talking. If Li Qianxue was worried that Hu Jiniao wouldn't deal with Su Qingsang, she could do it herself. It was okay to let her suffer a little without hurting her, right? She seemed to have thought of something and suddenly sat up.
Right.
Mom, I saw an old lady with Su Qingsang today. Old lady? What old lady? I don't know. Su Peijian was also confused. That woman looks like she's in her 50s. Su Qingsang calls her auntie. What auntie? Do you think she's a relative of Hu Jiniao? A relative of Hu Jiniao?
Yes.
Could she be Hu Jiniao's mother or a relative of the Hu family? I think Su Qingsang is very nice to her. She took her to buy a lot of clothes. What relative? Is it Hu Jiniao's mother? It was Su Qinghui who spoke. He had come back from a business trip. The Li family had been busy these days because of the project with Tianyu Group. As soon as he came back, he heard Su Peijian's last sentence. If it's a relative from the Hu family, I'm afraid we'll have to show up and treat him to a meal to show our hospitality. Su Qinghui sat down on the sofa as he spoke, and a servant came over with tea. He took a sip and glanced at Su Peijian. Are you sure she's Hu Jiniao's relative? Although he didn't like Su Qingsang, he had to admit that Su Qingsang would get married. That Hu Jiniao was really powerful. Putting aside the money it would bring to the Li Corporation through this cooperation, the other benefits it would bring to the Li Corporation were quite considerable. Su Qinghui had spent a lot of time with Hu Jiniao recently. Although he hadn't chosen Hu Jiniao as his son-in-law, he really admired Hu Jiniao.
Dad.
The last thing Su Peijian wanted to hear was that, but Su Qinghui looked like he was in a hurry to please Hu Jiniao.
Why?
I don't think so. He looks more like a country bumpkin. If she's really Hu Jiniao's mother, why would Su Qingsang call her auntie? Although Su Qinghui drank a little, he was not drunk. Call her auntie? Forget it. I'll ask Hu Jiniao tomorrow. Anyway, they've been seeing each other a lot lately. Chapter 290. Hu Jiniao didn't see Xiang Kaiping. He glanced at the room and faintly heard the sound of water. As if relieved, he stepped forward and put his arm around Su Qingsang's waist, who was still packing the clothes. Honey, did you buy these tonight?
Yes.
Su Qingsang looked at the bags in her hands. Do you think we bought too much? It seemed a little exaggerated, but she couldn't be blamed. She couldn't control herself. Because she met Su Peijian, she was afraid that Xiang Kaiping would think of Su Peijian's identity, so she kept asking her to buy more. Hu Jinyao raised his hand and pinched her cheek. It's too little. Honey, you can try to move the department store home next time. If we can't fit it here, we can put it in the villa. Can you not be so dramatic? She had bought too much today, and now she was worried that the small fitting room wouldn't fit all the clothes. She might really have to move some to the villa. I'm not exaggerating. You're my wife. I can't buy too much. Hu Jinyao suddenly had an idea. Honey, how about I buy a department store for you next time? You can buy whatever you want in the future. Hu Jinyao, are you planning to be King Yu of Zhou? Buy a department store? He really had enough. Of course not. Hu Jinyao put Su Qingsang on his lap as he spoke. He leaned over and kissed her face. My wife is much prettier than Baosi. Su Qingsang wanted to roll her eyes. This guy was really poor. He would die if he didn't spend a day in poverty.
Stop it.
The auntie was still there. Su Qingsang wanted to sit on her. I'm not. I'm serious. Hu Jinyao kissed her face, so he kissed her mouth. As he approached, Su Qingsang quickly covered his mouth with her hand. Did you drink? She had smelled it just now, and now it was even clearer. Just a little. Don't worry, honey, I'm not drunk. As Hu Jinyao spoke, his hands began to wander around Su Qingsang's body.
Hu Jinyao.
Did he think that they were the only two in a house? Su Qingsang quickly grabbed his hand and said, Stop it. I'm not. He buried his face in her neck. Honey, I miss you. We haven't done that on the sofa for a long time. Su Qingsang was now 100% sure that Hu Jinyao had drunk a lot. She grabbed his hand and sat down on the sofa. Sit properly. Don't mess around. If Xiang Kaiping came out later and saw it, it would really be embarrassing. Wifey. Hu Jinyao didn't break free from her grip. He just looked at her with a wronged expression. Su Qingsang wanted to scream. He was 1.8 meters tall, and he was a handsome CEO. Why did she like to put on such a pitiful face, as if she was a little wife who had been abused by her? Not here. Su Qingsang was a little annoyed. She glanced at the direction of the room, lowered her voice, and said, If you want, go take a shower first. I'll come back when I'm done. Hu Jinyao blinked, as if he had received Su Qingsang's words. He stood up, saluted, and said, Yes. Honey, I'll listen to you. Don't worry. He said he wasn't drunk. Look at him. It would be a miracle if he said he wasn't drunk. Go take a shower. Su Qingsang didn't want to see a drunkard, especially when Hu Jinyao was obviously very drunk. She waved her hand and told him to leave. Hu Jinyao turned around and suddenly turned back. He looked at Su Qingsang with a smile and said, Honey, guess who I drank with today? Who? No matter who it was, she wanted to hit him for making Hu Jinyao so drunk. Your father. Chapter 291. Hu Jinyao's position blocked Su Qingsang's line of sight. Therefore, she didn't notice that Xiang Kaiping had come out. Hu Jinyao was drunk, so he was less vigilant than usual. Tonight, he followed Su Qinghui to entertain some city leaders. During this time, Hu Jinyao had a lot of contact with Su Qinghui, and this contact made him see some other things. Su Qinghui had been in Lin City for a long time, so he was familiar with people and had experience. It was actually very suitable for him to deal with some social matters. My father? What happened to my father? To be honest, Su Qingsang didn't know Su Qinghui very well. Therefore, when she heard about Su Qinghui, she couldn't help but ask, Your father is quite a figure. Speaking of which, Su Qinghui was just a commoner with an ordinary family background. Later, when he married Li Qianxue, he almost married into Li Qianxue's family. One had to know what kind of family the Li family was. Even today, the Li family was one of the best in Lin City, not to mention more than 20 years ago. However, after so many years, Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue got married. In fact, there were people in the business world who said that Su Qinghui didn't deserve Li Qianxue, but Su Qinghui didn't seem to care at all. He was the general manager of Li Group, the president was Li Qianxue, and the chairman was still old Master Li. Seriously speaking, he was just the third in command. But now, the words of the third in command were more effective than the words of the first in the Li Group. No one in the entire company dared to look down on Su Qinghui. If it weren't for his good means, how could there be such a result? Most importantly, Su Qinghui's status was so different from Li Qianxue's, but he was quite calm. No matter who mentioned it, he was quite indifferent. This could only mean two things. First, he loved Li Qianxue very much, so much that he didn't care what others said. Second, he was quite strong, so strong that he didn't care what others thought of him. Then, do you think my father loves Li Qianxue very much, or is he strong? What do you think? Hu Jinyao didn't answer. He believed that Su Qingsang already had the answer. When he turned around, he found that Xiang Kaiping had come out of nowhere and had been listening for a long.
Auntie.
Hu Jinyao almost instantly sobered up and turned to look at Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang glared at him and quickly stood up. Auntie, come over here.
I've sorted them.
I'll put them in your room later. All right. Xiang Kaiping continued walking as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't heard what Hu Jinyao had said. Hu Jinyao and Su Qingsang looked at each other. In the end, they could only watch Xiang Kaiping tidy up her clothes as if nothing had happened. The three of them stopped mentioning that name. Relative? What relative? Hu Jinyao looked at Su Qinghui with confusion. Just now, the two of them had met because of business. After talking about business, Su Qinghui didn't rush to leave. Instead, he stayed. Was there a relative in his family? Pei-Shen bumped into Qingsang when she was shopping yesterday. She said that Qingsang was accompanying an auntie to try on clothes. I don't think she has any relatives in Lin City, so I wanted to ask you, is he a relative of yours? Su Qinghui said politely, if they're in-laws or relatives, we should have a meal together and show our hospitality. Hu Jinyao raised his eyebrows and thought about Su Qinghui's words. Treat her to dinner? Chapter 292.
Yes.
Su Qinghui smiled and said, since our families are already married, I'll treat her to dinner. Since someone from your clan has come over, our Su clan naturally has to entertain them well. No need. Hu Jinyao was still worried about Su Qingsang, so he couldn't really let Su Qinghui see Xiang Kaiping. She's just an ordinary relative. After I came here, I asked Qingsang to accompany me for a walk. I'll go back in 2 days. Su Qinghui didn't ask for more. Since Hu Jinyao said so, it meant that this relative wasn't important. Seeing that Su Qinghui was about to leave, Hu Jinyao asked, Dad, can I ask you a question?
What?
Qingsang's mother. Hu Jinyao paused. I mean, her biological mother. Do you know where she is now? Su Qinghui's expression changed almost instantly. He sat there with some emotions in his eyes that even Hu Jinyao couldn't see through. Can't you tell me? Hu Jinyao tried hard to find a trace of affection in Su Qinghui's eyes, but unfortunately, he couldn't. Su Qinghui didn't hear Hu Jinyao's words. He was thinking about the young woman from decades ago. Her shadow was already blurry, but he still remembered his impression of her. She had a gentle appearance and a beautiful appearance. Most importantly, he had a peaceful personality and stood aloof from worldly affairs. However, such a woman was hurt by him in the end and had to leave her hometown. He couldn't even avenge her if he wanted to. He could only look at Li Qianxue coldly and punish that woman, also punishing himself. But what was the use of that?
Dad.
Hu Jinyao called again. Su Qinghui lowered his eyes and restrained all his emotions. I have something else to do. I'm leaving. What about Qingsang's biological mother? Don't ask. Don't ask Qingsang. She doesn't know anything. In the future, don't ask. After saying this, Su Qinghui staggered a little and walked away as if he couldn't stand it anymore. Hu Jinyao narrowed his eyes. What did Su Qinghui look like? Did he still have feelings for Xiang Kaiping? When Li Qianxue returned to her room, she smelled alcohol in the air. She furrowed her brows in discomfort and looked at the man sprawled on the chaise longue. He was over 50 years old, but he maintained himself as if he was not even 40. He was considered famous in Lin City. When people talked about the son-in-law of the Li family, who wouldn't praise him? Even old Master Li appreciated Su Qinghui's business skills, even though he knew that the two of them respected each other. But such a man did not have a heart. Or perhaps he had a heart, but his heart wasn't with her. He seemed to be in pain. His eyes were closed, and his body lay there motionless. Li Qianxue thought for a moment, then turned around and poured him a cup of tea. Have some tea. Su Qinghui was still thinking about Xiang Kaiping. In fact, he hadn't thought about Xiang Kaiping for a long time. Her shadow had almost faded away. He had to force himself to not forget her again and again. But today, Hu Jinyao's words reminded him of it again. After thinking about it, he went for a drink after work. After drinking, he didn't want to come back, but the driver was very responsible and sent him back. The house was very quiet. Li Qianxue had her own business to attend to, and Su Peizhen had not been home recently. Su Yusen was at school, and even old Master Li had gone to visit his old friends. It was good that no one was around. It was convenient for him to miss Xiang Kaiping. He thought about the past between the two of them over and over again. Chapter 293. Su Qinghui's expression changed immediately. Of course, Li Qianxue noticed the sudden change in his expression. His expression just now was one of nostalgia in pain and regret in yearning. It would be a miracle if he wasn't thinking about that woman. This realization made Li Qianxue's breath stuck in her chest. Her hands hanging by her sides were clenched into fists. Did you drink? She didn't want to recall Su Qinghui's eyes. It would make her so angry that she wanted to kill someone. I drank, but I'm not drunk. Su Qinghui stared at Li Qianxue's angry face and inexplicably felt a sense of revenge. Don't worry. I only have sex with you once in my life, when I'm drunk. That's enough. Li Qianxue's expression was ugly. She took a deep breath and calmed herself down. You're wrong. You've done it twice in your life. One time there was Su Peizhen and the other time there was Su Yusen. Hearing her words, Su Qinghui's expression became more and more ugly. He suddenly stood up and pinched Li Qianxue's chin. Because of his action, Li Qianxue just dropped the glass of water she was holding onto the ground. The thick carpet prevented the glass from breaking, but it couldn't keep their marriage intact. What? Are you very proud? Yes, I'm very proud. Li Qianxue looked at him coldly. Because these 2 times are enough. That means you can't get rid of me in this life. Su Qinghui was so angry that he raised his hand. Li Qianxue raised her face. You want to hit me? Hit me, hit me. Su Qinghui didn't know how to hit a woman. He put down his hand with hatred. He pushed Li Qianxue away. Do you think there's nothing I can do to you? What can you do? Do you think I still care? Could her situation be any worse? She couldn't. That was all. Su Qinghui stared at Li Qianxue's face and understood what she meant, but he was even more resentful. Li Qianxue, don't worry. I won't let it go just like this. Let's wait and see. I also want to see what else you can do to me. After all, no matter what you do, it's impossible for you and that woman. As for the daughter you give birth to, she will forever be an illegitimate daughter who cannot be shown in public. Li Qianxue saw that Su Qinghui's face darkened because of his words. He glared at Li Qianxue with hatred, then turned around and left. He didn't notice that he forgot to close the door when he was arguing with Li Qianxue. Su Peizhen, who had just returned home, happened to hear her parents arguing. Su Peizhen's face darkened. Her hands were clenched into fists. It was all because of that mistress. If it weren't for her, her parents wouldn't have ended up like this. She had a way to take revenge on the mistress, but couldn't she find trouble with the mistress's daughter? Su Peizhen's eyes were cold and filled with coldness. When Su Qingsang entered the ward for her ward round, she found that Lu Xiangyu actually said that she wanted to leave the hospital. Although the stitches on your cesarean section wound have been removed, your hands and feet haven't recovered yet. It's not appropriate for you to be discharged now. Doctor, I'm really sorry. I really have no money. Speaking of this, Lu Xiangyu still felt a little embarrassed. This money was sent to me by my sister today. If I stay here any longer, I won't be able to pay the hospital fees. Su Qingsing frowned and looked at Lu Xiangyu's embarrassed expression. She wanted to help her, but the hospital had its own rules. Chapter 294. Doctor, please let me leave the hospital. I promise, I can be responsible for myself. How about this? I'll give you another checkup. If you're sure there's nothing wrong with you, you can leave after you're done with the discharge procedures. All right. Thank you so much. Lu Xiangyu looked at Su Qingsing gratefully.
Doctor, don't worry.
I'll go to my sister's house.
She'll take care of me.
That's fine, but you're still in confinement. You should take good care of yourself. I will.
Thank you, doctor.
After Su Qingsing finished the ward round, she learned that Lu Xiangyu had finished the procedures and was ready to leave the hospital. She thought for a moment, then wrapped a red envelope and sent it to her. Lu Xiangyu refused to accept it, but Su Qingsing told her not to be polite. Not only her, but several doctors and nurses in the hospital also sent some gifts to Lu Xiangyu. It was not that there were no pregnant women who were more miserable than her. Lu Xiangyu was more pitiful than other pregnant women because she jumped off the building by herself. She sighed in her heart. After staying in the obstetrics and gynecology department for a long time, she had really seen all kinds of strange things. Sometimes, she was really helpless. Su Qingsing thought that Lu Xiangyu was in trouble and that this matter was over.
Who knew that the next day at work?
Lu Xiangyu's husband, the man who forcefully dragged Lu Xiangyu out of the hospital last time, came to her door. Su Qingsing had just finished an operation. Before she could return to the department, she was blocked by that man. Where is my wife? Hand over my wife. Su Qingsing frowned. Looking at the man in front of her, she thought of the day when he dragged Lu Xiangyu out of the hospital. Your wife is not here. Not here? Where is it? Didn't you say so?
Huh?
You said I can't leave the hospital without paying? I didn't even come to pay the bill. How did she get discharged? Someone paid for her, of course. Su Qingsing didn't want to waste any more time with him. Doctor, last time you said that my wife was seriously injured and had to recuperate in this hospital. Why don't you say that now? As the man spoke, he took a step forward and did not forget to roll up his sleeves, looking like he was about to make a move. Su Qingsing furrowed her brows, and her face darkened. Sir, your wife was seriously injured, but she insisted on leaving the hospital. We could only complete the discharge procedures for her and let her leave the hospital. How would I know that it wasn't because you saw my wife didn't pay, so you kicked her out regardless of whether she lived or died? Huang Jie, who was at the side, took a step forward and said, How can you say that? Where is your wife? You can call her yourself. Why are you looking for us? I can't find it. I can't get through to my wife. As the man spoke, his expression changed. It must be you. It's you doctors. You drove my wife out. Before Su Qingsing and the others could react, the man suddenly lost his temper. You bunch of doctors who have no medical ethics and have no regard for human life. I'm going to kill you. Su Qingsing didn't expect the man to be so unreasonable. Before she could react, the man's fist was already swinging toward her. Even though she reacted immediately and retreated quickly, she was still punched in the stomach by the man. The man was very strong. Su Qingsing took a solid punch from him, and her expression changed instantly. Chapter 295. Su Qingsing turned her face and found that it was Shi Mengwan. Mengwan. Didn't she go to the competition? Are you all right? Shi Mengwan was still carrying a bag in her hand. She was holding Su Qingsing with one hand and carrying the bag with the other. Su Qingsing was about to answer that she was fine, but Lu Xiangyu's husband's fist came again. He didn't hit the nurses or the doctors next to him. He just hit Su Qingsing. Several nurses came forward and wanted to stop him, but failed. Seeing this, Shi Mengwan quickly pulled Su Qingsing aside. However, she was still carrying a bag in her hand. When she waved her hand, She was about to fall. At the same time, Lu Xiangyu's husband's fist came to Su Qingsong's face. Sure, Mengwan was anxious, but she was about to fall now. She quickly stood firm and saw that Lu Xiangyu's husband's fist was already in front of Su Qingsong. Several doctors who rushed over after hearing the news were shocked and quickly rushed over to stop it. Qingsong. Sure, Mengwan was anxious. Before she came forward, someone stood in front of Su Qingsong and stopped Lu Xiangyu's husband's fist. Lu Xiangyu's husband's fist was stopped. He was stunned for a moment and couldn't pull it out. Qingsong. Sure, Mengwan stood still and only felt that her whole body was relieved. She quickly ran over and found that the person who stopped the man's fist was the same person from last time. Dear brother? Sure, Mengwan suddenly stood there and didn't move. Su Qingsong's stomach was still hurting. When Lu Xiangyu's husband's fist came, she couldn't dodge it at all. When she thought she couldn't escape this punch, she was stopped. She also recognized who the person in front of her was. If she remembered correctly, this man's surname was Zhan. Hu Jinyao mentioned it last time.
Who are you?
Let me go. Don't be a busybody. I'm telling you. Otherwise, I won't be polite to you. Lu Xiangyu's husband looked arrogant. Zhan Haozi narrowed his eyes and punched him without thinking. What kind of man are you to bully a woman? His fist was fast and ruthless. Lu Xiangyu's husband was sent flying by his punch and hit the wall of the corridor. Lu Xiangyu's husband curled up. Zhan Haozi turned to look at Su Qingsong. Mrs. Hua, are you all right?
Thank you, Mr. Zhan.
I'm fine. There was something big. Her stomach was hurting, but she looked calm on the surface. Sure, Mengwan came to her senses and quickly went forward to help Su Qingsong. Qingsong, are you all right? I'm fine. Su Qingsong glanced at Zhan Haozi. As you can see, Mr. Zhan saved me. Mr. Zhan? Sure, Mengwan turned around to look at Zhan Haozi. There was a trace of shock on her face. His surname was Zhan? But dear brother clearly said that his surname was Haozi. A delicate voice sounded at this moment. Sure, Mengwan saw the woman she had seen last time and walked in front of Zhan Haozi. Brother Haozi, are you okay? Chen Feifei held Zhan Haozi's arm and looked worried. Why did you fight with someone? Does your hand hurt? Sure, Mengwan and Su Qingsong didn't say anything. They just watched Chen Feifei hold Zhan Haozi's hand up. She looked as if he didn't hit someone, but his hand was about to be broken. As best friends, the two women looked at each other. Su Qingsong's eyes were filled with worry, but Sure Mengwan's expression was much more complicated. Chapter 296. How did Big Brother become Zhan again? He had changed his last name, but she knew very well that no matter what his last name was, he was still her big brother. But what was going on now? Did he already have a new sister? I'm fine. Zhan Haozi stopped her, pulled his hand out seemingly inadvertently, and turned to look at Lu Xiangyu's husband, who was still on the ground. Lu Xiangyu's husband struggled to stand up. At this time, several doctors quickly stopped him together and did not allow him to make any further movements. Only Zhan Haozi noticed that Lu Xiangyu's husband seemed to be staring at Su Qingsong. He couldn't help but look at Su Qingsong. She was Hua Jinyao's wife. He didn't attend the banquet held by Tianyu Group a few days ago, but he was quite clear about what happened at the banquet. Maybe he should do Hua Jinyao a favor? Brother Haozi? Chen Feifei noticed that Zhan Haozi was looking at Sure Mengwan, and she suddenly became nervous. After all, she also recognized Su Qingsong and knew that she had a husband. So Zhan Haozi could only be looking at Sure Mengwan? She glanced at Sure Mengwan, and just a glance made her have a sense of crisis. The woman in front of her was very beautiful, gorgeous but not flamboyant, and there was a faint firmness in her eyes. She bit her lip and held Zhan Haozi's arm tightly. Brother Haozi, I'm a little uncomfortable. Why don't we go back first? Zhan Haozi lowered his head and looked at Chen Feifei. Today was the day that he took her to the hospital for a routine checkup. He didn't want to do anything about Lu Xiangyu's husband's trouble, but he saw that the person who was beaten was Su Qingsong, so he intervened. To Chen Feifei's surprise, Zhan Haozi didn't agree immediately. He turned to look at Lu Xiangyu's husband, who had just been punched by him and was struggling to stand up. You dare to hit me? I'm going to call the police. Call the police. Shi Mengwan was furious. She couldn't bear to see her best friend being bullied. You don't need to call the police. We will call the police too. She was very imposing. Zhang Haoze glanced at her and noticed the indignation in her eyes. Naturally, he also recognized that this woman was the one who mistook him for someone else last time. Do you think I don't dare to call the police? Lu Xiangyu's husband's attitude was still arrogant, but because of Zhang Haoze's existence, he was somewhat afraid. Su Qingsong's stomach was still hurting. She endured the pain and stood up straight, staring at Lu Xiangyu's husband. Sir, please don't be unreasonable. Your wife has indeed been discharged from the hospital, but she is not here. She has already paid the hospitalization fees, and the procedures were done according to the normal procedures.
You can leave now.
If you don't, we can only ask the security to escort you out. In fact, the security guards had finally arrived. Seeing that Lu Xiangyu's husband still wanted to continue, they restrained him together. What happened next was much easier. Everyone saw Lu Xiangyu's husband hit Su Qingsong. Su Qingsong insisted on taking him to the police station. You guys attacked too. Why are you sending me to the police station? Sorry, I'm not from the hospital. Zhang Haoze looked at Lu Xiangyu's husband and said in a slightly cold voice, If you want to sue me, I'll accompany you anytime. Lu Xiangyu's husband still wanted to say something, but he was shocked by the look in Zhang Haoze's eyes. He didn't dare to say anything and the security took him away. Shi Mengwan kept looking at him, her heart beating like a drum. Chapter 297. Su Qingsong noticed Shi Mengwan's gaze and also saw Chen Feifei, who had been looking at Zhang Haoze nervously. She rolled her eyes and took a step forward to stand in front of Zhang Haoze, coincidentally blocking most of Shi Mengwan's sight. Mr. Zhang, thank you so much for today. Mrs. Hua, you're welcome. President Hua and I are friends. Zhang Haoze's expression was indifferent, but Su Qingsong sensed something different. Friends? How could they not be friends? No matter what, I still have to thank you. I'll tell Hu Jinyao. Zhang Haoze nodded, knowing that Su Qingsong had accepted his favor. He was satisfied. Okay. Since there's nothing else, I'll leave first. Take care, Mr. Zhang. Su Qingsong saw Zhang Haoze off and turned around to find Shi Mengwan still looking in that direction. A few nurses and doctors came up to care about Su Qingsong's injury. Su Qingsong waved her hand, indicating that she was fine. After everyone left, she stood in front of Shi Mengwan and waved. Mengwan? Qingsong. Shi Mengwan finally looked away after Zhang Haoze left. When she met Su Qingsong's penetrating gaze, she awkwardly averted her gaze and quickly went to pick up the bag that she had dropped. You're not going to the competition? You're back?
Yes.
Guess what the result of my competition was? Shi Mengwan's eyes were obviously proud when she spoke. Su Qingsong smiled. Result? Guess the bottom? You're so annoying. Shi Mengwan pushed her. Be gentle. I'm injured now. Su Qingsong covered her abdomen with a pained expression. Are you okay? Let me help you back to the office to rest. Okay. Thank you, designer Shi. Yes. You have to call me that in the future. I won 2 awards this time. Really? Of course it's true. The Best Creative Award and the 2nd place in the finals. Not bad. This competition was national and had a great influence. Shi Mengwan was still very young. Although she didn't win 1st place, it was already very good to win 2nd place.
Not bad, right?
I bought you a gift to celebrate. Thank you. Su Qingsong went back to the office with Shi Mengwan. Zhua Hongchen, who had just finished his surgery, heard that Su Qingsong had been beaten and hurried over. When he saw Shi Mengwan, there were many things he couldn't say. In the end, he only left behind some external medicine. You're not bad. Shi Mengwan watched as Zhua Hongchen left with a disappointed look on his face. She's already a married woman. Why is the market still so good? As she spoke, Shi Mengwan didn't forget to close the door and gestured for Su Qingsang to take off her clothes so that she could help her apply the medicine. Damn, a married woman is also a beautiful married woman. Su Qingsang was lying on the examination bed with a mischievous look on her face. However, when Shi Mengwan's hand touched her stomach, she couldn't help but let out an awe. Yes, a beautiful married woman with a bruise. TSK, I couldn't tell. Being a doctor is a high-risk occupation. Did you just find out? Su Qingsang looked at her helplessly. He told her about Lu Xiangyu. Shi Mengwan was so furious that she was about to explode. This kind of scum, why do you care about him? We should have called the police and arrested him. Don't worry. He'll be in jail for at least 15 days. Shi Mengwan didn't say anything else. She helped Su Qingsang apply the medicine and spoke casually. Chapter 298. The one just now. Which one? Su Qingsang looked at her and didn't give her the answer. You. Shi Mengwan tightened her grip. You know the answer. Be gentle. Be gentle. Are you trying to murder me? Su Qingsang couldn't stand it anymore. Seeing the anticipation and eagerness in Shi Mengwan's eyes, she couldn't help but tell her. I don't know either. But when I went out with Hu Jinyao last time, I happened to meet him. I heard that his surname is Zhan. He seems to be from a good family. Oh. Shi Mengwan relaxed her grip and looked at Su Qingsang, obviously hoping that she would continue. I really don't know much. Su Qingsang couldn't bear to see her friend like this. But I do know one thing. What? The woman next to him is his fiancée. Shi Mengwan's hand stopped. She lowered her head and didn't look at Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang didn't know what expression she had now. Mengwan. I'm fine. Shi Mengwan didn't want to talk about it anymore. So he is engaged? Yes. Su Qingsang listened to her disappointed voice and couldn't bear it. She reached out and patted her on the shoulder. Mengwan, let's forget about it. Whether he is your big brother or not, he is going to get married now. But he's going to get married now, or he is already married. How could Shi Mengwan not understand Su Qingsang's words? It had been more than 10 years since they parted. Anything could change. It was understandable that dear brother had another woman by his side. However, she stopped applying medicine, pulled up Su Qingsang's clothes, and put her face on Su Qingsang's legs. I know, but Qingsang, he promised to marry me. Su Qingsang couldn't say anything. Perhaps because she had Hu Jinyao now, she suddenly understood Shi Mengwan's feelings. She sighed in her heart, reached out her hand, and patted her back. Mengwan, I asked Hu Jinyao to introduce you to a better man, right? Is that okay? Hu Jinyao's childhood friends were all very outstanding. Maybe Shi Mengwan would slowly let go after meeting a new outstanding man? Shi Mengwan suddenly raised her head and quickly stood up. You said it. I'm waiting. Shi Mengwan didn't want her friend to worry, so she put away all her emotions. Su Qingsang knew that she wouldn't let Zhan Haozi go so easily, so she didn't mention it again. You're back. I have something to tell you. It wasn't convenient to talk about these things over the phone, but now there was a chance. What? Su Qingsang told Shi Mengwan about Xiang Kaiping. Shi Mengwan looked as if she was listening to a story. Are you sure you're not filming a TV show? Shoot a TV show? She wanted to as well. However, it really isn't. Shi Mengwan opened her mouth wide, and in the end, she hooked her arm with a gossipy look on her face. Well, can I visit your mother? What are you talking about? What did he mean by cheat mother? I didn't say anything wrong. Shi Mengwan's perspective was different from Su Qingsang's. I didn't raise you or take care of you. When you're this old, you suddenly appear out of nowhere and pick up such a good daughter, Mengwan. Su Qingsang knew that Shi Mengwan was thinking too much. She was probably thinking of a conspiracy. I've been with her for a few days, and I think she can be trusted. Hu Jinyao had the same opinion as her. If you say so, then I have to go see her. Then wait for me to get off work. Chapter 299. Other than Zhou Hongchen, the hospital leaders and the department director had also come over to show concern before she got off work. They had even asked her if she wanted to take a day off. Su Qingseng couldn't stand the caring gazes and decided to leave work early. When she got home, Hu Jinyao hadn't come back yet. Xiang Kaiping was very happy to see Shi Mengwan. Her daughter had a good husband and good friends, so she was very warm to Shi Mengwan. Hu Jinyao had to work overtime again today. She didn't know what he was busy with during this time. Su Qingseng was used to him going out to socialize from time to time. Shi Mengwan realized that Xiang Kaiping was not bad. She could tell that her mother-daughter love for Su Qingseng was genuine. After dinner, Xiang Kaiping was in a hurry to clean up. Shi Mengwan patted Su Qingseng's arm. According to my appraisal, there's nothing suspicious. That's enough. You can tell just by having a meal? That's a must. Your eyes can't lie. If Xiang Kaiping wasn't Su Qingseng's biological mother, she could only say that her acting skills were too good. However, Shi Mengwan had dealt with many people over the years. Of course, she could tell that Xiang Kaiping wasn't acting just now. She really wanted to be nice to Su Qingseng. I think so too. The more time they spent together, the more Su Qingseng understood Xiang Kaiping. She reckoned that it wouldn't be too long until the day she called her mother. It was only a matter of time. Hu Jinyao didn't notice the wound on Su Qingseng's abdomen until she took a shower that night. Although the medicine was applied, the bruise was still there. It was such a big piece. Hu Jinyao frowned and looked up at Su Qingseng. Don't tell me you accidentally bumped into it. Hu Jinyao, who had once lived a free and unrestrained life, could, of course, tell that the wound was caused by a fist. I was just about to tell you that it was a collision. Su Qingseng didn't think it was a big deal. She didn't want Xiang Kaiping to worry, so she didn't say anything. Who did it? Hu Jinyao was not in the mood to joke with her. His eyes were a little cold. Su Qingseng didn't know whether to laugh or cry at his reaction. What are you doing? You know who did it. Don't tell me you still want to help me fight back? So, you were beaten by someone? Hu Jinyao nodded and stared at the large bruise. Tell me, who did it? Don't be like this. I'm fine now. Su Qingseng looked down at the wound. It was still a little bruised. Her skin was fair, so such a big bruise looked a little scary. It's true. I feel much better after applying the ointment. I'm fine now. Don't make a fuss. I'm making a fuss. Hu Jinyao narrowed his eyes. Tell me who did it first and I won't make a fuss. I'm really fine. Su Qingseng was a little helpless, so she briefly told him what had happened to Lu Xiangyu. Speaking of which, I'm also unlucky. It just so happened that he was Lu Xiangyu's previous attending doctor. Don't worry, he's already been sent to the police station. He's fine now. Was he really all right? Hu Jinyao thought of something else. Did that person come for you, or for the others? Speaking of this, Su Qingseng began to feel that something was wrong. Speaking of which, there were quite a lot of people at that time. It was very chaotic. She didn't know whether it was because of her or something else. Chapter 300. That might not be the case. Hu Jinyao thought a little more than she did. He thought of another thing. Did you say that Zhang Haoze helped you?
Yes.
Su Qingseng thought of Zhang Haoze and Shi Mengwan. If it weren't for him, I might have been hit a few more times. Maybe I should treat him to a meal next time? I got it.
Don't worry about it.
Hu Jinyao wasn't like Su Qingseng. Zhang Haoze was obviously trying to be nice to him. The project that Tianyi Group was doing with the Li family and the Qiu family was not a small one. Many companies in Lin City were eyeing it. Although Zhang Haoze didn't want a share of the profits, it didn't mean that he wouldn't want such an opportunity in the future. His ambition was not small. He put this matter aside for now. He was more concerned about Su Qingseng. Does it hurt? Hu Jinyao gently stroked the bruise. There was pain in his eyes, as well as a flash of viciousness. No matter whether the other party did it on purpose or not, he wouldn't let it go. It hurts. Su Qingseng admitted it openly. It really hurts. When I was hit in the afternoon, I felt like my stomach was going to explode. Do you dare to do it again? Hu Jinyao raised his head and looked at her. What do you mean by, do I dare to do it again? As the attending physician, I had to explain the situation to the family. Did he listen to you? It's his business that he didn't listen to you. That's not my responsibility, is it? Su Qingseng saw that he was still angry, so she put her arms around his neck and said, All right. I'll be more careful next time. Okay? Do you want to do it again? Hu Jinyao was amused by her words. Yes, it's not your responsibility, but don't you realize that every time something happens, you're always the first to do it? There are so many people in your hospital. Why are you always the first to get into trouble? Zhang Mei, Li Rongrong, and now Lu Xiangyu were all in his mind. Even if Li Rongrong wasn't mentioned, the other two people were kind enough to save people. Why didn't they end up well in the end? Su Qingseng was speechless. What happened today was really an accident. Normally, most patients are very reasonable with their families. Most of them? It's enough that you met one. Hu Jinyao looked at the wound on her abdomen. No matter how he looked at it, it was an eyesore. I only hit your stomach this time. Where else will I hit next time? For example, a slap on the face or the head. What if he gets hurt? Don't curse me. Wife. I'm not cursing you. I'm telling you that you don't have to rush into some things. There are so many people in your hospital, and there are many male doctors, right? Don't stand out next time. There are a lot of male doctors, but there are even more female gynecologists. You think you're right, don't you? Hu Jinyao was annoyed by her and reached out to pinch her face. It hurts. Su Qingseng looked at him, feeling a little wronged. It hurts so much. I'll let you die from the pain. Hu Jinyao was furious, but he still let go of her and applied the ointment for her. He looked very angry, but his movements were very gentle. For some reason, Su Qingseng felt very comfortable looking at him. His hand was hot, warm against her stomach. For some reason, Su Qingseng felt a lot better. All right. Hu Jinyao withdrew his hand. You sleep for a while. I'm going to wash my hands. He went to the bathroom to wash his hands, but he didn't rush out. Instead, he took out his phone and pressed a few numbers. Chapter 301. When Hu Jinyao returned to the room, there was no trace of emotion on his face. He walked to the bed and sat down. His eyes fell on Su Qingseng's face. She had been frowning and looked like she was in pain, but now she was playing with her phone again. Hu Jinyao glanced at it and found that Su Qingseng was chatting with Shi Mengwan. When he came back, Shi Mengwan had already left. So, Hu Jinyao didn't know that Shi Mengwan had been there. He lay down on the bed and wrapped his arms around Su Qingseng's waist. Hu Jinyao's voice sounded in her ear. Chatting with Shi Mengwan?
Yes.
Shi Mengwan had something that was inconvenient to say just now, but now she could say it. She reminded him of something that he hadn't even noticed. Su Qingseng actually vaguely knew about it, but she had been so busy recently and was shocked by Xiang Saiping's sudden appearance that she had forgotten about it. Omega, what are you talking about? Su Qingseng pulled his hand away from her waist. Although he didn't touch her wound was a little bit below. She reminded me that I must be careful not to let Annie see my father or other members of the Su family. If she really saw them, there would be trouble. Hu Jinyao nodded. On this matter, his attitude was the same as Shi Mengwan's. She's right. It's better not to. I know. Su Qingseng nodded and held Hu Jinyao's hand. I hinted to Auntie. She actually knew it. She wasn't particularly worried about running into them. The Su family's villa was nearly an hour's drive from here, and the Li Corporation was very far from here. During the time that Xiang Kaiping had been here, her activities were basically around here. She must have known it. That's good, but it's still better to be safe. If we really run into them, I'm afraid there will be trouble. If Su Qinghui's feelings for Xiang Kaiping had been so deep, he might have done something. If that happened, the Li family wouldn't let it go so easily. Especially Li Qianxue and Su Peijian. That can't be helped. Su Qingseng sighed. My mother came from so far away. I can't drive her away. She should be living with me from now on. I also thought that they might run into each other sooner or later. When the time comes, we'll have to deal with whatever comes our way. Hu Jinyao didn't say anything. If that day really came, he would naturally protect his woman and Xiang Kaiping. He wouldn't give the Su family or the Li family a chance to cause trouble. Hu Jinyao looked at the email on the screen with a sharp look in his eyes. Su Peijian? She sure had guts. How dare they touch his people? He tapped the table with his fingertips. He wondered if Su Peijian had done it alone, or did Li Qianxue have a part in it. Li Qianxue knew that Xiang Kaiping was back? Was he trying to make Su Qingsang leave the hospital? No, this didn't seem like Li Qianxue's actions. It seemed more like something an impulsive and brainless person like Su Peijian would do. If he wanted to know, it was very simple. He just had to make a trip to the Su family. However, Hu Jinyao pressed the internal line. His voice was a little cold. Make some trouble for the Li group. After all, we're still working together. As Hu Jinyao expected, Su Chenghui showed up in less than 2 days. Jinyao, what do you mean by this? Hu Jinyao was considered a junior, and Su Chenghui called him by his name in private. Hu Jinyao glanced at the secretary behind Su Chenghui and waved at her, signaling for her to leave. Chapter 302. What do you think? Su Chenghui was a little annoyed. It's not a big deal, but our two families are cooperating now. Don't you think it's a little unkind of you to do this? The Su family was a respectable family in Lin City, but Hu Jinyao was different. Just because the new mayor, Li Junsheng, was his childhood friend, he actually wanted to trip him up? Although the movement was very small, fortunately, he discovered it in time. Otherwise, the consequences would have been somewhat serious. Unkind? I don't think it's me who's unkind, but you? What do you mean? Su Chenghui didn't understand. Hu Jinyao didn't try to be polite with him. He directly put the things he had prepared in front of Su Chenghui. Su Chenghui picked it up and glanced at it. Soon, his expression changed. This is impossible. Peijian would never do such a thing. Hu Jinyao stared at the certainty on Su Chenghui's face and suddenly leaned forward a little.
Dad.
Is Qingseng really your daughter? Su Chenghui looked at Hu Jinyao and seemed a little angry that he had asked such a question.
What are you talking about?
Of course, Qingseng is my daughter. Really? Hu Jinyao nodded and looked at the annoyed look on Su Chenghui's face. Sometimes I wonder if Qingseng is really your daughter. Otherwise, how could you be so biased? So, are you trying to avenge Su Qingseng? You can even play around with such a cooperation case? So what? Hu Jinyao raised his eyebrows and leaned back in his chair. I have money. No matter how much he earned, it was just a number. But he only has one wife. Su Chenghui took a deep breath. He didn't believe that his son-in-law would be so casual. Hu Jinyao, aren't you afraid that you'll have to explain to the board of directors? If I can't even protect my own wife, how can I help Director Namu earn more money? I think they'll understand. Su Chenghui didn't say anything. He nodded heavily and said, What do you want? I don't have the habit of hitting women. Since we are relatives, I can forget about the company's matter. But Su Peijian, I don't want to let this go. If she had to blame someone, she could only blame Su Peijian for being too blind and making a move on his people. Peijian is Qingsang's older sister. Is that so? Does she see Qingsang as a sister? Hu Jinyao was angry at Su Chenghui's bias. President Su, Mr. Su, let me remind you. Su Peijian is your daughter, and so is Su Qingsang. During this period of time, because of their cooperation, the two families had become closer than before. Su Chenghui was his elder, so Hu Jinyao had to respect him. It was the first time he had seen Hu Jinyao being so rude. Then what do you want? You're not thinking of beating Peijian up, are you? How is that possible? I told you, I don't hit women. Hit Su Peijian? That would be too easy. I want her to come and apologize. Impossible. Su Chenghui knew his daughter's personality very well. Asking Su Peijian to apologize to Su Qingseng was like asking for her life. Then there's nothing to talk about. Hu Jiniao spread his hands with some regret. If that's the case, then I can only continue with the small punishment I'm giving the Li group.
Hu Jiniao.
Su Qinghui stood up in anger. You can't be so willful. Sorry, I'm just that willful. Hu Jiniao knew all too well what people like Su Peijian cared about. If he didn't make her lose face, how could he make her feel pain? Chapter 303. I'm sorry. That's all I want. No other conditions. Su Qinghui felt a throbbing pain in his forehead. He stared at Hu Jiniao and couldn't believe that he was really so willful. Look, Qingseng is fine. Besides, this was caused by the patient's family. Don't tell me that a small quarrel between children is going to escalate to our company and affect our cooperation? No, this is not a small fight. Hu Jiniao corrected him. Maybe you didn't see Qingsong's injury. It's a big bruise. It makes my heart ache to see it. I don't have any other good points, but I'm very protective. I'm super protective. You don't have to say more. If you have time to talk to me here, why don't you go and persuade Su Peijian to apologize to Qingseng? Su Qinghui knew that there was no turning back. He was extremely annoyed. Hu Jiniao, is this your idea or Qingsong's? My idea is Qingsong's idea. Hu Jiniao wasn't afraid that he would be unhappy. In fact, you should be glad that Mrs. Su didn't participate in this. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been so easy. Good, very good. Su Qinghui was angry. He turned around and left without looking back. Hu Jiniao believed that Su Qinghui was a smart man. It was up to him what to do next. When he got home, he found Su Qingseng, Xiang Kaiping, and Sister Lu in the kitchen. He didn't know what they were talking about, but they were laughing happily. Hu Jiniao smiled and looked in the direction of the kitchen. This was a completely different environment from the Hu mansion. It was full of the smoke and fire of the mortal world. There was no big house, no group of servants to keep the house spotless, and no servants would be afraid to speak loudly because Lu Tongjiao was at home. But this feeling was more like a home with a human touch.
Huh?
You're back? Su Qingseng saw him standing there from the corner of her eye. She washed her hands and came out. Guess what we're doing today? Making dumplings.
Yuck.
You saw it. No, I smelled it. He smelled the strong smell of chives as soon as he came in. Su Qingseng said, You don't eat chives, do you?
No.
That's good. Su Qingseng smiled and said casually, You should know that chives are good for your health, especially for men. You should eat more of them. She didn't realize what she had said, but Hu Jiniao narrowed his eyes and looked at her back. Strong sungrass? She really dared to say it. Su Qingseng would know the consequences of saying the wrong thing at night, but she didn't know now. The three women were almost done wrapping the dumplings. They just needed to boil the dumplings. Su Qingseng suggested that Sister Lu stay for dinner as well since there weren't many people there. After he was done, he didn't forget to bring a plate to Sister Wang next door. When they returned, the four of them sat around the dining table. Come, have some dumplings. Xiang Kaiping was really happy today. She stood up and scooped some dumplings for them. Auntie, take a seat. We'll do it ourselves. I'm fine. Xiang Kaiping had been in Lin City for almost half a month. His complexion was much better than when he first arrived. Firstly, he was in a good mood. Secondly, this was his homeland, after all. He was more used to staying here. Now that his daughter and son-in-law were by his side, she was very satisfied. You have to eat more too. You've worked hard at work. Su Qingseng put a dumpling into Hu Jiniao's bowl. She did it casually and didn't notice that Hu Jiniao's eyes darkened. Chapter 304. Su Qingseng was in a good mood after eating dumplings. She watched Sister Lu and Xiang Kaiping clean up the dishes and sat with Xiang Kaiping for a while. They both had to work during the day and were busy with their own things. Xiang Kaiping was bored at home alone. Although Su Qingsang taught Xiang Kaiping how to use electronic devices such as mobile phones and tablets, she found that Xiang Kaiping was not very interested in them. At night, Su Qingsang was about to take a shower, but Hu Jiniao had already followed her into the bathroom. "You want a shower?"
Yes.
Hu Jiniao nodded. Su Qingsang put the clothes away and stood aside. "Then you can shower first." "No, honey." Hu Jiniao put his arm around Su Qingsang's waist as he spoke. "We can shower together."
No.
Su Qingsang knew Hu Jiniao very well in this aspect. If she showered with him, it would not be a simple shower. Hu Jiniao didn't pay attention to what she said. Instead, he brought her body to stand under the shower. "I think it's necessary." What do you want?" Su Qingsang was shocked by his gaze. Ever since they had sex, the two of them could be considered to be in sync in some aspects. It was because she was too weak and Hu Jiniao was too strong. The two of them were not on the same wavelength. The two of them were quite cooperative, so Su Qingsang hadn't seen Hu Jiniao's wolf-like eyes for a long time. "Honey, you actually asked me to eat more chives today." And then, Su Qingsang tried to stand aside. "Is there a problem? You said that chives are for a strong day." Hu Jiniao narrowed his eyes slightly. Looking at Su Qingsang's confused expression, he hugged her body tightly. "Honey, I didn't know until today that you were so dissatisfied with my previous performance." I didn't." Su Qingsang finally understood. She was anxious to explain, but Hu Jiniao did not give her a chance. He used the whole night to prove that he was very healthy and that he did not need to eat chives at all. Su Qingsang wanted to cry, but had no tears. She watched Hu Jiniao easily control her with his strong arms. "Do I need to eat chives?" She even asked him to eat more. Was he too bold?
No.
Su Qingsang's clothes were gone. "Are you sure I need a strong day?"
No.
"Do you think there is something wrong with my body?" "No problem. Let me go." Hu Jiniao didn't let go of her. If he didn't hear Su Qingsang's soft and heavy voice ringing in the bathroom, "I won't say it again." "Stop." "I won't say it again." "Stop."
Stop. No. Jerk.
"Stop. Don't come again."
That. Qingsang.
When Su entered the hospital, Su Qingsang's chin. She gritted her teeth and cursed Hu Jiniao in her heart. However, that couldn't alleviate her current condition. Today, she even came here in Hu Jiniao's car. Fortunately, there were no surgeries in the morning and only routine ward rounds. Su did not have surgery either. He had just sent a pregnant woman off in the afternoon when he saw Su Peijian standing at the door of his office. Su Qingsang was stunned for a moment. She didn't think that Su Peijian's visit was a good thing. She looked around and finally closed the office door. Su Qingsang looked at Su Peijian, a little wary of her appearance. "What's the matter?" Su Peijian stood there. Her face was dark. Chapter 305. Su Peijian was the pride of the world. She grew up surrounded by stars. She came from a good family, was beautiful, and had a high education. Regardless of which aspect it was enough to surpass most ordinary people. She always had a sense of superiority, especially in front of an illegitimate daughter like Su Qingsang. She felt that Su Qingsang was incomparable to her. However, she never thought that one day she would have to bow her head in front of Su Qingsang. And all this was just because she wanted to teach Su Qingsang a little lesson? She thought of what Su Qinghui had said to her before. He said Hu Jiniao's plan and decision. What was this? Based on what? Why should she bow her head to an illegitimate daughter that she didn't like? Not to mention that this illegitimate daughter caused her family to be at odds with each other and her parents to be apart. Su Qingsang watched as Su Peijian's expression changed from time to time. She couldn't figure out why Su Peijian had come here. "What can I do for you?" It wasn't time for her to get off work yet. There were no patients at the moment. If there were patients, she would be busy. Su Peijian stood there without moving. It was too embarrassing for her to say an apology. Su Qingsang was more and more confused. Her vigilance rose to the highest point. "Su Qingsang, Why did she do that? Didn't she just find a man? She just had a man to support her. To put it bluntly, didn't she rely on men? What was the big deal? Let me tell you, even if I apologize to you today, it's not what I meant.
Don't try to make me bow my head.
Su Qingseng couldn't figure out what he was talking about. What are you trying to say? She apologized to me? Was this world magical?
But why?
I'm sorry. Su Peixian said this, and was about to leave. Su Qingseng was more and more confused. Why are you apologizing to me? She really didn't know that Hu Jinyao had tortured her for a long time yesterday. Hu Jinyao went home to tell her about Lu Xiangyu's husband. However, he was provoked by her theory of leaks and taught her a lesson for the whole night. Finally, he got up in the morning and went to work after eating and drinking. He completely forgot to mention it. He didn't mention it, so Su Qingseng naturally didn't know. Now that she heard Su Peixian's apology, she was confused. Su Qingseng, I'm warning you, don't be so shameless. Su Peixian was sure that Su Qingseng did it on purpose. She was obviously pretending. This made Su Peixian even angrier. She hated Su Qingseng even more. She would remember today's humiliation. One day, she would pay Su Qingseng back for what she had suffered. Su Qingseng was confused. How could she be so shameless? She didn't even know what was going on, okay? Seeing her like that, Su Peixian was not willing to stay any longer. After glaring at her hatefully, he quickly left. Before he left, he even forgot his demeanor and slammed the door shut. Su Qingseng became more and more confused because of his actions. Had Su Peixian taken the wrong medicine today? At night, Su Qingseng looked at Hu Jinyao, who was lying next to her, and quickly raised her hand to stop him from moving any further. Don't come. It's uncomfortable. Hu Jinyao was stunned for a moment. He didn't plan to do anything today, but Su Qingseng's defensive look made him feel amused. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.